Paige Duggins-Clay, as a civil rights attorney in Texas, was part of the Intercultural Development Research Association. Her organization has filed a filed a racial discrimination complaint against the Slaton Independent School District. She joins us now to talk about the complaint. Ms. Clay, how are you doing this evening?
Good evening. I'm doing very well. I've enjoyed some rest from the holiday and really grateful for the opportunity to continue to share these family stories with y'all.
Well, thank you so much for all that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about the lawsuit that has been filed? What was the basis of it, and what are the remedies that are being sought?
Thanks, Robert. And just to be really clear, so my amazing organization, IDRA, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan civil rights organization dedicated to educational equity. We were really proud to work alongside the Lubbock area NAACP and the families that you heard from earlier and several other families in the Lubbock area to file complaints with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, seeking exactly what you just heard this last panel talking about, really seeking the Department of Education to take a look at the practices that are happening both in Slaton ISD and in its neighboring district, Lubbock Cooper ISD, and to investigate and determine whether these school districts are following the law of Title VI in terms of preventing hostile environments, preventing and responding appropriately to racial discrimination and harassment, and not engaging in discriminatory disciplinary practices, which you heard the Manahan family, in addition to so many other families in the area, have really been experiencing. And so what we're really looking for is the department to take a look and to help facilitate these districts coming to the table, taking steps to make changes so that this doesn't happen to any family again.
How pervasive is this issue of racial bullying and racial harassment in this region that clearly is not just the Manahans? There are other students enough to necessitate both legislation on the state level and this lawsuit. How pervasive an issue is this?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is an issue that we're experiencing not just in the Lubbock area, but across the state, indeed across the nation, as you've heard about from other experts. Even since filing the complaint, our organization, along with our partners, the Tech Civil Rights Project and the ACLU of Texas, have been receiving other complaints from communities in San Antonio and elsewhere, and as far as El Paso. So this is not just limited to one district. I'm very grateful for the many members of the state House of Representatives and state Senate who are considering legislation to address this issue. What I can tell you is that our partners at the Ellwanger Law Firm received calls as far back as a year ago in the Lubbock Cooper community. And they've been working with the families out there to try to get accountability for, by my last count, 10, 12 different students who've been impacted just in this small sort of West Texas town. And so we know that it's happening. We know that the broader culture of suppressing truthful conversations and dialogue about cultural, racial histories and differences is not helping matters, and in fact, fanning the flames. And that you heard mention of some of the legislation that's been passed in Texas and is sweeping really across the nation. That's really censoring our educators and our school leaders' ability to address this effectively, and really would urge the legislature to consider taking steps to make sure that educators know that we really shouldn't tolerate, and we should make sure that kids understand the history, the deeply harmful impact of this sort of language, and give educators and kids the tools to learn from this and to not continue to repeat these really shameful behaviors.
I can hear the conservative response now saying, well, this is just woke liberal cancel culture, trying to criminalize students, just playing games on the schoolyard and trying to turn everything into a big racial grievance card. What's the response to the opponents of this who of course, want to maintain the status quo, which is white supremacy? What is being done in order to deal with those things? And also, how can we get actual bipartisan legislation done, or even a civil judgment, when you have a good portion of the population that feels that issues like this do not affect them and therefore not a big deal?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I think the reality is that the families in Slaton, the Manahan family, the other really brave families in Lubbock Cooper, they're not asking for special treatment. They're not asking for anything outrageous. They're just asking for a safe, supportive, non-discriminatory learning environment for their children. And that's what every parent wants for their child. I don't know, it was said earlier, I don't know who could possibly oppose any kind of policy change that would ensure that educators have the tools that they need to respond effectively to prevent and then eliminate, once it does occur, racialized bullying and harassment, in addition to other forms of bullying and harassment, which we know is on the rise. And if for those who would oppose it, I'd ask them to have a conversation with Ms. Manahan or other families, the Kemp family out in Lubbock Cooper, about the really horrific impact that these current policies and the current failure to follow law under Title VI and school policies, the impact that it's had on their children. I think you should talk to Autumn and see how it's derailed and impacted her life. And if you still can have a conversation with those folks and with those parents and those students about how this has impacted them and feel that the status quo is okay, then that says more about you than it does than any of the other advocates just looking for high quality education for their kiddos.
Oh, where is this racial discrimination complaint at currently? What is how close is it to actually getting a decision or a ruling on it? And what can be done from other organizations who might want to file an amicus brief? What can be done to help support it going along?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. At this stage, it's just an administrative complaint with the Department of Education. And so folks can show their support by supporting the organizations on the ground doing this work. The most important organization you can reach out to is the Lubbock Area NAACP. They are providing direct on-the-ground support and resources for the impacted families. They're trying to provide counseling and other mental health and other tutoring and academic support, career and mentorship to the kiddos out there who've been impacted. Not all of them can leave these schools, right? And so having that direct on-the-ground support is really, really important. And I'm super proud of the great advocacy and support that Lubbock NAACP has been doing. In addition, I think the previous panels did a very excellent job of laying out the need for both state level and federal legislation to address the gaps in our current civil rights law. We need to make it clear that when this sort of behavior happens, educators have an obligation to respond, and not just by kicking kids out of the classroom, not just by calling an assembly, which is what happened in this case, and suggesting that, oh, we don't do this. It has to be meaningful. It requires deep education. It requires investing and training so that people can recognize and really facilitate these difficult conversations so that kids can learn to respect each other and to not engage in this harmful behavior. And it requires investing in support for kiddos who are experiencing it. We know that these have the impacts of bullying can have horrific challenges and roadblocks for our kids, mental health related challenges, career and developmental challenges. And so really investing in supports for kids who are the victims and helping them stay on track when they are impacted. And so really going to the State House, raising their voice. You can follow idra.org and sign up for our updates. We'll be sure to provide opportunities to how to testify in the state legislative session and to connect you with other folks on the ground in the Lubbock area and beyond for those who want to reach out to the families that are directly impacted.
If this complaint is successful, what's the next step? What are the remedies that are being requested? What are the changes that can be made as a result of this complaint that may work in conjunction with the state level legislation as well as the potential litigation on behalf of the families?
Absolutely. So the really powerful thing about complaints with the Department of Education is that they, in many ways, not quite maybe the impact is legislation, but in many ways they can have this really wonderful systemic impact of creating guidance, not only for the districts that are the focus of the complaint, but putting other school districts on notice. And so if you look at the summary of the complaint that IDRA and our colleagues put together, you can view that on our website. We've made a number of requests for the department to facilitate a resolution. They include training and education for educators so that they respond appropriately, not only in response, but to prevent racialized bullying from happening at all, to provide that supportive measures to eliminate the use of discriminatory discipline practices like DAP, which you've heard so much about and which is disproportionately foisted on Black children and children with disabilities. And so we're really hopeful that the department will look at those requests. We think the facts in these cases speak for themselves. Unfortunately, as with many types of legal action, these complaints can take time. And so we think we've done a good job laying out the information to the department along with our partners. We have really wonderful counsel at the Ellwanger law firm that has been assisting with this, and I know will lead negotiations on the complainant's behalf. And we're really hopeful that in the next couple of months, the department will help facilitate a resolution that everybody can be really proud of. And I'm really hopeful that the districts involved will view this as an opportunity to make positive change.
Well, when you talk about a resolution that everyone can agree upon, what would that look like? What would be kind of the ideal resolution that you think could come out of this complaint that would really help to ameliorate the problem?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that these families, we've been meeting with them for the last several months in sort of a community setting. And what I'm hearing from those families is that what they want, first and foremost, is an acknowledgement that the way that they have been treating is not right, it's unfair, and that it needs to change. And then sort of creating those opportunities for the community to be involved in crafting the resolution. And so one of the requests that we've made at the department is that they ask the school districts to convene a community-based groups where parents and students and other community groups can have input on the school's policies, can have an opportunity to provide feedback, to have direct access to school leaders so that they can hear directly from parents and they can no longer be ignored. I think that's a really critical component of any agreement. And then, just getting back to basics, Title VI is really not that complicated of law. You've got to prevent racial harassment in all its forms, and you cannot engage in discriminatory discipline. And here, the reflexive use of placing Black children in DAEP is just sort of per se questionable. And we're really hoping that the department will urge these districts to stop, relying on DAEP, to have clarity in its policies that we consider in accordance with school policies, progressive discipline policies in terms of looking at restorative justice options, in terms of looking at alternatives to exclusionary discipline, and really things that will help make the whole school community better instead of just using this form of punishment, which we know hurts kids.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.